Welcome to Speaking of Strong Style, where we discuss the news, events, and issues surrounding New Japan Pro Wrestling. I am Stephen Conway. With me, as always, is Jeremy Finestone. With you, also, we're contributors to the Fight Game Media Network. We're off to a strong start, Jeremy. I've already tripped over something, but I think it's because of just pure fatigue. I have been shoveling instant coffee in my mouth like the Nightmare on Elm Street girl, trying to get through all of these tag team matches that we've been watching as World Tag League and Super Junior Tag League is coming to a head, coming down to the wire. And as always, Ghetto has booked a tournament that has many possibilities for the last couple of nights. So very quickly, we're going to go into the standings. We're going to talk about our favorite matches. We're going to talk about some of the issues that have gone on, and there have been a few. One person off the tour. We'll get to all that. Jeremy, just overall impressions. For me, I feel like things have picked up a little. I feel like these last few matches or cards have been better than the early ones. And while I'm not doing cartwheels over this tour as far as quality goes, I do think it's picked up a little bit. Do you feel this way, or am I just in a better mood?
You might be in a better mood. The tournament has gotten better, but it's not setting anybody's world on fire. I think anyone who has been following New Japan has a pretty good idea of where the direction of these tournaments are going.
Okay.
This is G1 light, this is tournament light, where it's just basically the underdogs are coming back. The people who are trailing out front are going to get losses that you may not have expected at a time. These are classic Ghetto tropes that he leans on in order to tell a compelling story. We're all having fun with it. It's not the greatest tag tournament you've ever seen. It's not the greatest round robin tournament you've ever seen. It's not the greatest New Japan tournament you've ever seen. But is it better than most stuff that you're watching in wrestling right now? There's an argument to be made that time well spent.
Yeah, no, I'm enjoying that. And meanwhile, all the Goddess of Stardom tag team tournaments going on the Stardom side, and I'm watching a lot of that. Mm-hmm. So I've just been in tag team heaven there for a while. It's just been a lot, but I'm enjoying it for the most part. And we're going to begin by just going over the World Tag League standings. This is the heavyweight tournament. And, as it comes down the stretch here, we see that something interesting is going on here. Aussie Open at 14 points, and they have a bye on the last night of this tournament. Now, the bye we're going to get to in a second, but let's just run down this a little bit. So they're kind of in a level above everybody else. They're at 14 points and getting a strong push. Shane Haste and Mikey Nicholls, the team TMDK, Naito and Sonata, they're at 10, as well as defending tournament champions Goto and Yoshihashi. At 8 points, just a little bit below them, Great O'Connor and Aaron Hanare, Tanahashi and Yano in the spoiler category there. Minoru Suzuki and Lance Archer at only 6. We're going to talk about that. Bad Luck Fale and Chase Owens. Little asterisk by that team. Alex Coughlin and Gabriel Kidd, Evil and Yujiro Takahashi at the bottom. Again, some interesting things there as far as the results go. Now, we mentioned Chase Owens and Bad Luck Fale out of the tournament. They are no longer participating. Chase Owens had a death in his family, and we hope that everybody is recovering okay there. That's always tough. Our thoughts are with Chase Owens, his family, as they go through a very tough time. They ended up sending Chase back to the United States so he could be with family at this point. So what they're doing with that is Fale and Owens' remaining tag team matches are forfeits. The team they were going to face instead get 2 points automatically. And in the interest of quote-unquote fairness and under the professional wrestling logic here, they wrestle like a young lion team or a team of mid-carders on the show. So they have to have the same number of matches, just not tournament matches, as everybody else. And then Bad Luck Fale is usually wrestling one of the young lions in a singles on that card too. He's in Japan. Instead of sending him back to New Zealand, they're giving those young lions the good experience of working with a really big guy. And, I think it actually is probably going to be good for the Lions, Jeremy. Yep. There's really no way to simulate Bad Luck Fale in the gym, is there? Guys like that aren't growing on trees. So,
that is a diplomatic way of putting it.
guys like Louis or Luby, or no one knows how to pronounce this poor man's name. We're working on that.
Oscar Luby.
No. I've heard Lueba. We'll get to it. We'll figure it out. We might have to ask him directly. But Fujita and Oiwa, Nakashima, the young Lions at this point, getting those singles matches with Fale, I think it's good experience for him, though. You got to learn how to work with guys like that. So, at least we can get something out of this, and Fale can get his bookings in. And, after seeing Lions Pride, I have a bit of a soft spot for Fale because even though he plays a heel on TV, he seems like a really good guy that cares about his students. So it's just an unfortunate situation. And we hope that Chase can be with his family and find some comfort there.
Yeah, I think the best way to put it is Chase Owens is never going to be on the top of any card, but he is a mainstay of New Japan Pro Wrestling. It's an absolute tragedy what's happened with him and his family. We wish him all the best, and although he was unable to finish this tournament, I think everyone involved knows that this is for the best, and we hope nothing but good things coming out of this and the best possible outcomes.
Very much so. And looking at this tournament going forward now, and you mentioned that Fale and Owens weren't considered a real contenders in this, as it turns out anyway. But so the forfeits, I don't think, are throwing off the booking too terribly much. Of course, we mentioned Ghetto. We keep mentioning Ghetto's name. For those who don't know, Ghetto is the New Japan booker, also a performer on the show, a long time wrestler for many promotions, and somebody who's just been one of the best bookers in the world for a long time. So he's got this in a bit of a tangle here. The difference is Fletcher and Davis are almost in the clubhouse here with a shot at the finals. So, which we expected. Both of us predicted that Aussie Open would do very well in this tournament. Some key matches, though. Haste and Nicholls against Aussie Open on the 8th coming up. On the 11th, that's really the only key match from the 8th, the show on the 8th there, as far as I was concerned. On the 11th, though, we have Yoshihashi and Goto versus TMDK, Nicholls and Haste. So that's a chance for TMDK to kind of pick up some major points there at the end if they can get through that gauntlet. But they're facing a couple of really tough teams at the end. Yano and Tanahashi against Henare and Okan on the 11th. Might have some effect on things, but maybe not. Sonata and Naito against Yujiro and Evil. I bring that one up just because it's the last match of the night, and you never know if there's going to be a bit of an upset special right there. Aussie Open again on a bye that final night. How do you see this one playing out?
Well, there has been a thought in my head for a while now that the tag titles will be defended perhaps in a three-way at Wrestle Kingdom. So I'm just wrapping my head around the fact that I think Mark Davis and Kyle Fletcher and Sonata and Naito might both be facing FTR at Wrestle Kingdom. I think there's a very strong possibility of that happening and FTR losing their titles without ever even getting pinned.
Which is how they won them in the first place, too. They didn't
100%.
pin the champions, yeah. And like you mentioned, too, and I think you said it best, it's just a way of protecting everybody. FTR Absolutely. Can do a job and not look bad. Someone else can pick up a win against a really good team and still be legit tag team champions. This is a way for everyone to kind of come out of this all right.
Yeah, so you have Mark Davis and Kyle Fletcher who have 14 right now. And if they lose, they will remain at 14. And you have
So these already include their buy points that they're going to pick up on the last day, just so you know. Otherwise, you just think, well, wait a minute, they're going to get 16 on the last day, and no, it's yeah.
So they're capped with one more win. So their ceiling right now is at 16 points, but they could just remain at 14 from here on out because Mikey Nicholls and Shane Haste have defeated some named teams and have come out the victor in a few matches that you weren't necessarily expecting them to win. So you have that going for them. But at the same time, Naito and Sonata are titans in New Japan Pro Wrestling. And the fact that they have two matches with people that would argue that they are, in fact, underdogs in both of these matches for different reasons, shapes, and forms. Evil has a world title win over Naito in his past, so it's not like you can not take Evil seriously in one of these matchups. But if they win out, they're at 14-2, and they have the tiebreaker over the Aussie Open. So if they want to make some type of argument that they would have won this thing if it weren't for this, or that, they could probably do so. They could come up with a compelling argument to get all three of these teams in there. I just don't know if they will. If it's going to be two teams, I'm really banking on Naito and Sonata, because the story of Naito going for gold at Wrestle Kingdom is just too compelling of a story that they've gone back to the well on way too many times throughout the year for them to pull the zip cord on him now and bail on that plan. But really, I think this is a three-way, and we are looking at the ascension of a major force in New Japan Tag Team Heavyweight Wrestling with Mark Davis and Kyle Fletcher, and even within their own stable.
And it's one of those things where they've been good for a long time. I think people are really getting the idea of just how good these guys are and how young they are. If New Japan is able to sign these guys to come to their company consistently, and I have a feeling that after these performances, other companies are going to come knocking. If they can get them, they could be looking at long-term foreign stars out of Davis and Fletcher. And Gideon Gray has been doing excellent as their manager, and there is a package to these guys that makes me want to see them in New Japan a lot longer. So I'm totally okay with them getting the super push on this, and if they come out of it all the stronger the better. Again, I agree that Naito and Sonata feel like a team that needs to be involved in a major thing at Wrestle Kingdom, and there's just no path for either one of them. If not, and I don't see them doing a Tokyo Dome show without Tetsuya Naito in a major match. You could always do something where someone comes on the video screen like Kenny Omega did with Will Ospreay and challenges him. Yes, you could always do that and just put him in a special match, whatever it may be. But again, I've been talking about this, that Naito and Sonata as a team is a good team, and it might be a way to preserve Naito a little bit. His body's banged up. And so I still think they're going to come strong at the end of this tournament, but there's just a lot of possibilities. And Haste and Nicholls, they've been very good all the way too. I don't know if they need to do it this year. There's time with those guys, and I don't know that they're full-time regulars. So, Aussie Open and Naito and Sonata still feel like the choice to me, but the path to this is fraught with upsets.
Do you get a sense that people are still kind of sleeping on Aussie Open? I still see people making comments like they never win, or they're pushed down the card. They're not getting a whole lot of attention. And I'm not sure if what they're doing right now around the world and with New Japan is penetrating as much as like we think it is.
Well, I mean, when United Empire has been on AEW, they have been kind of buried a little bit. And so, but AEW's booking is geared toward a certain constituency. So that's always going to be the case with United Empire there, because you're not allowed to outshine certain folks. So,
and they had their spot on Impact for a few weeks.
I mean, I think that outside of that, I mean, New Japan, which is the company that matters in this situation, seems to take Davis and Fletcher very, very seriously. They put him in a main event against FTR there in England. They've been kind of showing them off on, they've been on Strong. They've been, it seems like everywhere they pop up in a New Japan controlled environment, they're pushed pretty hard. So with that in mind, they might be in exactly the right place if they want to make that trip. They want to make that trip. And I know that they're Australian. That trip's not easy for them either, by the way. That Japan and Australia is not it's a lot easier than the US, but it's a long trip. All depends on what they're willing to do and how much they're willing to work with New Japan. But for career prospect purposes, doing a year or two there doesn't sound like a bad idea.
Not at all. The only what I was more trying to ask is they have not hit their ceiling in terms of like the fans understanding just how good that these guys are.
No, I agree there.
And so what is it gonna have to take? Is it gonna have to take a blow away, like steal the show match with FTR at Wrestle Kingdom for these guys, for people to just turn around and say, I just want to see them. They're the 2023 team of the year kind of thing, because they're in front running. If they stay healthy and they're putting this caliber of matches on for the next 14 months, they're going to be the front runner for tag team of the year for me, because there's no one working the amount of matches that they're working. FTR is doing great, but they're not working the amount of matches that these guys are working and the pace that they're working. So like, just I'm planting seeds right now. This is their year, 2023.
2023 is going to be Aussie Open's year. It could very well be. They have the talent to carry that. And going over some of these things here, you look at these results now. I want to point out a team that's a little bit further down here. Minoru Suzuki and Lance Archer. And I only bring this up because something interesting is going on with the booking over here. Minoru Suzuki is doing the job in a lot of these matches. And it's something that, you know, they've done things with Archer before where he's gotten a flash pin. You can roll in New Japan world, you can roll up Lance Archer and catch him for a 3 count. They're not doing that. They're having, and he's part-time. They're having Suzuki lay down and sometimes just clean to people's finishers. Like Naito just rolled him up and he kind of botched the finish of that match where he took the pumping bomber from, there's another match against Naito. It was one of those Suzuki-gun LIJ matches early in the card. And he got the pumping bomber from Shingo Takagi. Naito goes off the ropes and goes to do that roll-up move that he does after the pumping bomber. And Suzuki took the bump wrong and kind of landed sideways. And so he just grabbed his legs, rolled him up, and Suzuki laid there. It's appears to me might just be one tour, but the way New Japan books, this isn't an accident. It feels like they're moving Minoru Suzuki down the card. He hasn't competed in a G1 since 2018. He's in his early to mid 50s, and they might be pushing him a little bit more toward that Makabe Honma Tenzan era where he's kind of there to protect the rest of Suzuki-gun. For the last year, Zack Sabre Jr. has been the number one single in Suzuki-gun, with Taichi not too far behind him. But it just feels like this in particular. I mean, he's teaming with a part-timer and he's the one doing the jobs. It just feels like a message is being sent that maybe Suzuki is there to do the Kaze ni Nare early in the card. Everybody cheers that. And then, you know, he protects the other guys by losing the match. And that seems to be the booking here. Or am I getting too worked up about that?
I don't know if you're getting too worked up over it. I think he's just bulletproof. Like you can watch him come in and do his Suzuki match in the US and he's Teflon. But when you go back to Japan, like his role is, you know, a supporting player in the act. You know, like
it hasn't always been though, has it? Because he's been the utility player where they can put him in a major singles match and he pulls out something very, very good. But if he's like losing, if he's the guy dropping a fall in an 8-man tag, it also sends a signal that he's not going to be getting that shot at Okada. He's not going to be wrestling Naito in a big situation. Yeah.
But you got to take your blinders off. He hasn't been in a G1 in years. You know,
right. But he has wrestled Okada. He has wrestled like Tanahashi in a big match. You know, he's done those.
But it's been a few years. This has happened for a while. Like they've phased him out in such a way where he's more of like the attraction on the card rather than like the reason you're coming to the card. He's the reason you come to a card in the States, but he's a part of the card in Japan, if that makes any sense.
He's just getting pinned a lot more than he used to.
Absolutely. And you know, when Mikey Nicholls and Shane Thorne got the pin on him, and I was like, ooh, ooh, that's a spicy meatball right there. But you know, like you can get a lot out of pinning Suzuki. I do think that there's a little bit of concern that they're going back to the well in the middle of this tournament. I think they got pinned 3 times in a row or lost 3 times in a row in the middle of this tournament and in the batches of matches that we had. So it's not a great run that they have. Am I worried? No. Are they spending capital that maybe they don't have? Yes. Maybe that's a fair thing to say, but I'm not worried.
Okay, all right. Well, it's not so much of a worry, but is this just the signal that now Geto and the company believes that his time in those special matches, where every once in a while he comes up and has that special hard-hitting match, singles match on a pay-per-view type of, they don't have pay-per-view. You know what I'm talking about? Right. The major shows at the end of the tour. Is that time over? And I think it probably is getting toward being over. So
it's fewer and farther between. It's definitely like we're getting to a point where you're not getting the special Suzuki singles match on a big show, but we're still getting them. And I just think, you know, they needed a spot to fill. They had Lance Archer, the Suzuki-gun connection, but they were never figured in to be the big plan for Wrestle Kingdom. And so, you know, You got to pay the troll toll, I guess, is the best way to do it. If you're in this tournament, you're going to lose some matches, and sometimes you're going to look like, oh, they lost that match to that guy. Cool.
Alrighty then. So we're doing it that way. Fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Fine. So I thought that this week was better than the previous week. I enjoyed the shows a little bit more. The issue with me with this tournament is when they do the both tournaments in the same night, those matches feel pretty rushed because they got to get through a lot in a short order. That's my only real issue. But the Osaka show, I thought, actually had some decent stuff on it. I had some favorites. You had some favorites. From the heavyweight side, Jeremy, my first one that I wanted to really point out, because again, this is a lot of matches. If you have New Japan Strong, here are some recommendations from us on matches that are worth your time. I really liked in Osaka, which is an outlier because it was one of those shows where both tournaments were going on at the same time, Naito and Sonata against Aussie Open. And I really enjoyed this match from Osaka. I'm going to bring up the little graphic here as soon as I can find it. There we are. There you go. There it is. And yeah, I just thought that this was just a real solid tag team match. And, it's one of those things where these are the two main contending teams. I'm bringing up my notes for it here. And what I liked about this one was just that there was a lot of back and forth, and Naito actually managed to counter the Coriolis. So the Coriolis is Aussie Open's finisher. That's the one where they kind of pick him up and you're in almost a kneeling position, but they're holding you up, flip you over, and splatter you. He managed to turn that into a Destino. And I thought that was one of the more clever escapes from that I've ever seen. I thought it was, of course, these are four terrific workers. This was a solid match, and it ended the night there in Osaka. And Naito and Sonata have been winning a lot of their main events so they can do the talk at the end. That's just how you kind of set those things up, because they're the ones that people want to hear on the microphone. Of course, you get the microphone at the end of the night. It's a big deal in New Japan. And this one was one of the better outings for these two teams. And it also was the first loss, I believe, for Aussie Open in this tournament, which they had been on such a run and such a roll. And I think it gave the fans a little bit of hope. It was like, okay, Naito and Sonata really are serious contenders. I think they always knew it, but this is the one that kind of cemented it. Psychologically, I thought this was an important match for the tournament. Okay, our favorite team is definitely making a run right here, and these Aussie Open guys aren't just going to go and steamroll everybody. And anyway, I thought it was well done and worth the time.
Yeah, this was one of the matches I had to agree with you. Was one of those matches. You picked it, so I'm like, well, it's his pick, so I'm on board with him. And I gave you the okey doke on that one earlier, but this is absolutely a great match, and I would have picked it if you hadn't. It was just these two teams are going to meet again very, very soon, and the outcome will likely not be the same because it came down to a couple of moves at the very end, and it could have gone, honestly, very, very different. Just a fantastic match. Everyone rose to the level of knowing that these were both teams to beat and a very clutch key point in the tournament.
There you go. My other one I wanted to bring up here real quick, and I won't spend a whole lot of time on this one. This one is my under-the-radar pick right here. I thought on November 30th, and that was in Shizuoka, these two teams here, Suzuki and Archer, and Hanare and Okan, just seemed to click, and they just had a really terrific match right there. And it ended up being one of the wins for Suzuki and Archer, and Archer got, splattered Hanare with his finisher in order to win this one. Again, it was Archer getting the win, not Suzuki, which I thought was Suzuki's gotten a couple of package pile driver victories, but this one was just a strong outing. Sometimes two teams that you don't normally expect to really click just kind of mesh a little bit. I enjoyed this one. Think it's worth a look. And again, not one that's going to factor into the standings too much, but a good tag team match. I liked it.
It was definitely a big mean guy match. When I looked at it,
Yes.
I tried to look back and figure out what about this match did he like? And then that pretty much explained it. It wasn't one that I spent a whole lot of time thinking about because there was actually another match with Okan and Hanare that I'm going to get to shortly. But first, I'm going to talk about two matches from the 5th that I particularly liked.
Okay.
And this one might surprise some people.
Look at that.
Oh man. Clark Connors and Gabriel Kidd versus Evil and Yujiro Takahashi. Canny viewers from last week will remember that I gave Gabriel Kidd a little bit of a hard time, just overacting, playing up against the gimmicks of other people. And he really dialed it down in this one, and it became more of a competitive outing in which they hadn't won any matches. Like they had a big fat donut on their card up till now. And Alex Coughlin pulls his suplex pin on Yujiro Takahashi, and they get the 1, 2, and 3. And son of a bitch, that was a perfect match.
They have been good in this, Kidd and Coughlin. Of course, they're not getting a lot of wins. They're just a step above Young Lions. They're not ready for a big push, but they've really shown up well. And I think this tournament, we're going to get to our winners and losers from this tournament besides just the match results. But spoiler on this one, I think Coughlin has really benefited from this tournament. I think he looks great. Good grief, he's shredded. And he's hit some power moves on people you wouldn't expect. He body slammed and held up Bad Luck Fale in their matches, not just that whole, kind of basically where Fale does a cartwheel for a body slam. He was holding the dude up and all that. I know a lot of that's leverage.
Power moves.
He's strong. He's a strong man. And he's looked good in these matches. And their matches have been entertaining, even in their losses. And then they let these two guys overcome the entire House of Torture because they had interference from Sho and Dick Togo in this one as well. And they overcame all of it and got their win. And it was a bit of a pat on the back for their efforts, I felt, to at least get their hand raised once in this tournament.
It was one of the things. I'm not going to make this about me in a way, but I'm critical about wrestlers, but I want to give them their flowers and be honest in critiques. And so when they do well, and I feel like I'm critical about them, I'm going to come back around and say, you stepped up your game. I don't hate you. I want to see better from you. This was a good match. They if you want to see a culmination of everything that Kidd and Coughlin are doing in the World Tag League, and you just want one match to get their vibe, this is the match to watch. And then also from that night was this match, United Empire versus United Empire.
This was really good.
This was a tremendous match. And Mark Davis and Kyle Fletcher won this match, in which you can very arguably say that they took the role of the premier tag team in United Empire after this match. I know it wasn't Great O'Con and Jeff Cobb that handed over the reins, but this was very clearly a symbolic passing of the reins that this is the heavyweight tag team in United Empire now. And that's the reason I wanted to highlight this match, because it is a very tangible changing of the guard that you don't see in a peaceful way within a faction. This is something different that you usually see in the way that a paradigm will shift within a faction and everybody's cool with it. This was done very, very well. And I would make a point to go check it out.
It's a good match. Henare is a good wrestler, and I like O'Con a lot. This match, also worth mentioning, by the way, Gideon Gray's post-match promo. So Gray is, of course, the manager of both teams. He does all the ring introductions. So he introduced both teams, brought them all out. They came out as a group. They all stood on the ramp together, or just above the ramp on the little platform together, walked to the ring together, wrestled each other, and then afterwards, Gray came in the ring, got on the microphone, and cut what could only be described as a babyface promo, talking about how when you lose, you pick yourself up, you don't make excuses, you learn from it, you come back stronger. That was the whole thing. And there it is right there, because the guy's doing a hell of a good job. And the whole speech was to his guys, not the fans, really, although the fans picked up on it and went along with it. And in the end, the United Empire guys all shook hands. They did the crowns up pose at the end and walked out together. I thought it was great. I like when factions don't automatically turn on each other as soon as something goes wrong. I think it makes for a stronger story when that there is actual cohesion out there, when they can wrestle each other and shake hands after, even if they're kind of heel-ish, and United Empire is in that little group between House of Torture and some of the babyface groups. But this, I thought, was a good promo, a good match, and just a good presentation for the United Empire all the way through.
Got to respect the money mark when he makes executive decisions, my friend. You got to respect the money mark.
All right. Well, anything else from the heavyweight tournament, or should we move on to the juniors? Or if you have anything else, let's do it.
No, I think we can really talk about a better idea of the winners and losers of the whole thing next week, because we have a vibe, but with a few more tournaments, we might be a lot clearer on all that.
Fair enough. So let's look at this. Now, this is the junior heavyweight standings. And so we've got a few things here. Again, haves and have-nots, right? These have shaken themselves out a lot of the ways that we thought. There aren't any real surprises here. But Ace Austin and Chris Bay leading the pack with 12. The current IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag Team Champions TJP and Francesco Akira at 10, along with Alex Zane and El Lindemann, doing a little better than I thought. I thought they would be more middle of the pack, but they're right up there at the top. Bushi and Teton, Yo and Lio Rush. We expected these people to be contenders as well, Jeremy. So this is one, and then you see at the bottom the have-nots there. Robbie Eagles, Tiger Mask at 4, and just above them, Taguchi and Clark Connors. Above them in our program, but below them in our hearts. Yoshinobu Kanemaru and Doki at 4. Man, this Taguchi and Connors, boy, we're going to talk about them. Kushida and Kevin Knight, and Kevin Knight is paying his dues, right? But this guy is impressing a lot of people with his athleticism. He is working very, very hard. Reminds me a little bit of what Team Filthy did during G1, where every time that those guys would come out, it would kind of light up the room a little bit. Kevin Knight's a future star in New Japan, I hope. Because I would love to see him in singles matches against a lot of these juniors. And Sho and Dick Togo, we're going to have to talk about House of Torture here in a little bit, because I think they're sending us an interesting message. But overall here, we have some key matches coming up that involve the standings. Lindemann and Zane will be facing Austin and Bay on the 7th. That could be an upset right there, just to make things a little tighter at the end. And on the 10th, Lio Rush and Yo against Teton and Bushi. Again, somebody's going to rise to the top there. And, of course, it's all going to come down to probably tiebreakers and a big mess on the last day right there. And we have some good matches coming up, because those are some good matchups there between those teams. And so we're going to see the top contenders against each other late, which is kind of what I'm hoping for. And the other one I wanted to mention there, Jeremy, here's my upset special. I'm calling it right now. We had one. Doki and Kanemaru defeated TJP and Francesco Akira clean. Doki got the victory. I've never been happier. This is a guy I bang the drum. I honestly think that Doki is actually a lot better than people give him credit for. And he and Kanemaru had a really good match against the champs and won. Now, of course, in New Japan world, that means they will get at some point a junior heavyweight title shot that they'll probably lose. It'll be a placeholder title shot on the way to another thing. But Doki and Kanemaru, who now have a title shot against the champs, are facing Lindemann and Zane on the last night. To me, that's an upset special. That could be the one that trips Zane and Lindemann up on the final hurdle, so to speak. So that's my upset prediction there. What are your thoughts as this one winds down?
So I actually had that one listed as one of my matches for later. So I'm all about that one. I think there's a couple of things that I circled earlier that I want to touch back on. Yo and Lio Rush having that match with Bushi and Teton on the very last night. If Yo and Lio Rush were to lose, I could see one of them blowing their top with each other. I'm not 100% sure it's Lio Rush at this point.
Really? You think Yo might be going there?
There was a spicy meatball moment with Yo in another match.
I knew you saw it too. I knew you saw it. Lindemann, right?
Yeah, it's my other match that I got here.
A little dickish behavior from you.
I was just like, ooh, hey, that's chaotic.
And again, none of this happens by accident. They're not improvising this stuff. Someone said after this match, Yo, you're a bad sport today.
Like if he went into business for himself, he would have been suspended for doing that. Like if that was against storyline, that would have been handled. So I'm watching that. So here's a couple of things. He got that, and I would say Teton and Bushi win that, and then win the tournament from there. But you also have, where is this? Ace Austin and Chris Bay versus Alex Zane and Lindemann.
Yeah,
and if
it's
you
on 7.
remember Ace Austin and Alex Zane are buddies, and they turned on each other, and Austin got the best of that back then. This is about the right time for a receipt to be given in order to Bullet Club to be foiled in their attempt at making it to a tag title berth for the Super Juniors. I'm just throwing that out there. Like, there just seems to be something brewing in there that feels like 9 months later, after the best of the Super Juniors, in which Alex Zane and Lindemann both had a great showing, so it shouldn't be a shock that they're having a great showing now. They had confidence then. They have confidence in them now. All these top 10 teams are all these points were all people in the best of the Super Juniors. They were all just blown it away, and new names and premieres. And we're at that point where it's just like, yeah, no, that wasn't a fluke.
Yeah, this has been this is an interesting one. There are a lot of ways that could go. You mentioned Lio Rush and Yo. One of those two could go nuts on each other. I agree. I think that's possible. And then you have like some of the very top contenders, Austin and Bay. Those are Impact guys that aren't there full time. Now we've seen that with the tag team division, they have an AEW team as their World Tag Team Heavyweight Champions. So doesn't disqualify anyone, but you wonder, is that who they're going to go with? I'd be fine with them if they did. TJP and Akira, there doesn't make any sense for them to win the tournament. They're supposed to be developing contenders. So just a lot of things. Bushi and Teton, they just did that. So that could be Yo and Lio Rush with the turn coming later. That could be too. I mean, there are really a lot of teams that could win this and still make sense for Wrestle Kingdom.
Yeah, I already suggested 2 teams to face the champions for the World Tag League. They have 4 people in the junior heavyweight junior heavyweight singles match. Like, they're clearly trying to get a lot of people on this card. It would not shock me if there was just a small thing in which a number of people. But at the same time, you don't want to devalue the point of winning this tournament. If you win this tournament, you need, there needs to be a tangible, reward and, a pathway to glory.
There you go. So let's look at some of our favorite matches from this thing. There have been some fun stuff going on here. And let's take a look at
2, and so you got 1. So I'll start with this one.
You want to start with yours? Okay, let's do that one. So Yo and Lio Rush against Zane and Lindemann. You really got a kick out of this one. I did too, for really good workers here. What'd you like about it?
I thought it was hard hitting. I thought everyone was on top of their game in wrestling this match, and there wasn't a weak link in the whole thing. And when you're watching it and you see Zane and Lindemann kind of doing these joke matches earlier on, and you're just like, come on, guys, I know you're better than this. I know that you can go. And then they have this match and they go. I want to sit there and say, thank you. I know you can't do these kind of matches every night. It's absolutely grueling on your body. But trying to put over the comedic aspects of your wrestling when you have a major spotlight on this, when you are capable of so much more, is fundamentally important for me to just shake you and say, no, not the priority here. Wrestle like you mean it. And this is that kind of night. And then, as we were talking about earlier, there was a very curious post-angle aspect with Yo and Lindemann having a little bit of a tiff, and Lio Rush having to pull Yo off. And make no mistake, Yo instigated all of it. Yo slapped at him, and then they had a pull apart, and then they had another pull apart, and then they had to get taken away. So it was salty. Definitely.
I like a little bit that they're putting a slight edge on Yo. One of the issues I have with some of the Hantai juniors, it's that they often seem pretty milquetoast. Kushida, who is a legend, had a bit of an edge to him sometimes. Kushida could get pissed off, and do some nasty things to people. And you kind of need that. I mean, the ultimate baby faces in wrestling history all had kind of that little edge to it. Don't push me too far. It gets ugly. And even some of the white meat babyface types, as they say. But it's been the issue with Master Wato. He's starting to pull out of that a little bit and show a little bit of fire. Yo, I think, is one that definitely needs a little bit of an edge to him, where he just seems like a doormat sometimes. And so if they want to give him a little streak of nastiness when it comes to Lindemann or something, I'm down with it. I think it'll help him.
Yeah. I want to make a little joke. Maybe Yo's been tortured a little bit too much lately, and he's just got he's got a little bit of mean streak now.
There you go. So this is one involves one of the same tag teams. There it is again. You can see Zayn and Lindemann. They're just flipped over that way. In case you're wondering if they just reversed the image. Yep, pretty much. But they have against Teton and Bushi, and this was one that was from the second in Osaka, which was a pretty strong show. Osaka brings out the best in a lot of these guys. Plus, cheering crowd didn't hurt either. But a bit of a surprise, Alex Zane getting the pin on Bushi with the cinnamon twist. And another one that just a strong match with four guys who seem motivated in front of an enthusiastic crowd. So this one's worth going out of your way to see. Might end up having some pretty good bearing in the standings too. Could end up having something to do with the tiebreakers and things. So anyway, a good one from Osaka right there. And Zayn getting a big career win in a big city, getting a pin on Bushi right there. So, I like this one a lot, and I think it's worth a look. That's I don't know if I had anything more to say, except it was just a good wrestling match that I enjoyed.
I mean, there's not much to say at this point. You recognize all of these guys.
Yeah.
You know what they have to offer. And if you came in here and said anything other than like, I was a little disappointed by what I saw on that is a massive disappointment. So I am not in any disagreement or any shock or surprise that you have Bushi and Teton as one of your recommendations for the show. I probably would have had that one as well, but you already had it on there, and I wanted to highlight a couple of the other things going on with one of their other matches. So I brought up the Lio Rush and Zayn match. So here we go.
I've been waiting for this moment. So no,
you know what? I'm going to give you the floor. I want to give you the floor. Let's go for it.
Wait, here's the thing too. I noticed this earlier with Doki when he was wrestling a match with Kushida and Kevin Knight. When he gets to do his lucha libre, because of course he spent a lot of his time in Mexico, and he was doing the Mexican style arm drags and some of the leg sweeps and things with Kushida. The guy's smooth as silk, and I think he's really good. Of course, you have to have that guy in a faction that does the jobs and protects the other guys, and he does that very well, almost certainly without complaint, and that's a valuable thing to have. You got to protect people. But I think Doki is actually a pretty good wrestler. I'm not saying he's an El Desperado. El Desperado is clearly one of the best junior heavies in the world, but I think this guy is pretty good. He is a good technician, and I like that he's getting a little bit of his due here on this. They gave him the pin in the match here against the junior tag team champs. And I just feel like this dude's a little bit underrated. So I am very happy that Doki's getting a little bit of shine here in the tournament when usually he's the one that's sulking down the loser's aisle.
I don't disagree with a single thing you just said. They have been working very, very hard in this tournament and have basically risen to the level of whatever their opponents have been brought to do, because that's their job, is to make their opponents look good to their capacity. And when you have TJP and Francisco Akira, who are immensely talented, as you have seen for the last 6 months, Kanemaru and Doki can rise to that occasion. They can wrestle to that level. They're not called upon and asked to do so on a regular basis, but New Japan keeps these men employed for a very specific reason, and it's because they are very good at what they do when called upon. And so when we had this match, you forget about this. You forget just how good these guys are. And like you said, underrated is the word. I'm somewhat dismissive of the lower mid card of New Japan because they don't get their due. They don't get to have these matches on preeminent cards in which they get to spotlight just how good they are. And when they get an opportunity to do so, they don't miss. They didn't miss in this match. And all the credit in the world, this was their time to shine. And they did. And you're probably right. They're going to get a tag title shot prior to Wrestle Kingdom. And it will be fun. I think we all know the outcome.
Sure.
But Good for them. Great fucking match.
All you can ask of guys like that is to step up when they do get that rare spotlight. And they did. And so as far as I'm concerned, Doki's doing exactly what he's supposed to be doing right there. Yeah. So, and let's see, any other favorites for you, or should we go on to, I'll tell you one thing. There's a team, Jeremy, 2 teams actually that are not in any of our lists and have not gotten a graphic on this show. Evil and Yujiro Takahashi on the heavyweight side, Sho and Dick Togo on the junior heavyweight side. Bullet Club, House of Torture, that wing of the Bullet Club right now.
I gave you an Evil and Yujiro picture a few minutes ago.
Yeah, you did. You're right. Yeah, but the thing with these 2 teams, you're certainly not going to see Sho and Togo. You're not going to see
No.
They have been interfering in each other's matches. They have been coming in, going 4-on-2, getting rallied up against, beaten down, and losing. What is going on with House of Torture? I have a theory. And it could go either way on this, but I feel like either they are just going to abandon the whole experiment because they're just tearing them down to pieces, or they have the idea of a strong push coming up soon. Because you remember that Bullet Club was really on the outs before Jay White came back. They did the Juice Robinson angle that didn't end up panning out for a lot of reasons.
Take your glass of water. Take your glass of water.
No, but House of Torture, this is one of 2 things. It's either the bottom before the big rocket ship where they put somebody else with them and give them a big push like they have before with a group that gets torn down. Or this could be them just deciding, and maybe this is just my hope, we're not that good at this. This isn't what New Japan does well. The ref bumps are almost always awkward, don't quite look right. The ref stays down way too long. The interference isn't particularly of any quality. This isn't what New Japan does well. Is there a chance, Jeremy? Is there a chance they realize that and House of Torture is going to, in some form, change or just go away from this crap?
Well, speaking of the torture of a dry, parched throat that you had to suffer through in order to get your point across. Okay, so I hate to burst your bubble on this, but I don't think they think this is a problem. I think that we are going to have this House of Torture perpetuated at least for another 6 months.
So are they bottom carders then? Are they low
might
carders?
They might be. You know, like they still have titles on them. They have the trios, never open weight titles that they're carrying around. So that's the whole point of the sum is greater than their parts. When they're a unit, you know, that's when they steal their wins. But when you put them in like situations where they can't operate and feed off each other like they're the Beagle Brothers and DuckTales or whatever, they're not accomplishing anything whatsoever. So they have spent the capital that House of Torture has. They are going to need to be responsible for something that is so dastardly that they get all their heat back. But this has been diminishing returns ever since, when I mentioned earlier, Evil winning the IWGP title back in 2019, 2018, somewhere around there. And they've just been trading off that ever since. I don't think they think this is a problem because they have a traditional Bullet Club, and this allows them to protect that Bullet Club while still having, you know, their NWO red version of the Bullet Club hanging around. I don't think it's a priority for them to fix something that they don't think is broken, even though we all don't like to use a fully operatable device that they are.
I mean, I don't know that I'm saying that it's broken. I think that they might just be saying maybe it's run its course. Because the other thing that I wondered is that would cheering crowds change the way New Japan thinks about House of Torture? Because what we wondered is, does this have a lot of heat? And since the cheering crowds came back, I think you can say it doesn't. Like when they come down, it's more of a groan from the crowd.
Yeah.
It's not boo, you know, screw you guys, we hate you. The kind of heat you want to get from heels, it's kind of this again.
Exasperation. Like you're just here we go again.
I gotta go do this. And it's like they almost anticipated, oh, there he goes, he bumps the referee, now here comes the other 2 idiots, and they just look so buffoonish that I wonder if some of those early cheering crowd responses, which hasn't changed their mind a little bit about whether House of Torture is actually doing what it's supposed to do, which is generate heat. I don't think it is. I don't think it's helping any of them. It's certainly not helping Watanabe, who is a pretty good wrestler and can do a lot more than this stuff. And my hope is that, now that we have cheering crowds, they're not particularly responding to these guys. Maybe it's time for us to find something else for this group to do. And instead of just being this buffoonish thing, maybe they rally and come up with a different presentation for these wrestlers, a lot of whom are pretty talented. Show's terrific. Yeah. Evil's really good. Yujiro and Dick Togo are
diplomatically speaking,
evil and Show are really good. And Yujiro stands next to Peter, so we can't get rid of him. So here we go. And truthfully, Dick Togo's a pretty good wrestler, but they can't shine in this. And I wonder if some of the cheering crowd responses has taught New Japan that maybe we need to find something else.
Yeah, I went with the 6 months because if there's a teardown, there has to be a teardown in which they lose the titles, and that there's a story beyond losing the titles that they carry.
Might be the last straw.
Because they have the titles, you can't disrespect the titles in such a way that the House of Torture, it's the one last fuck you to the promotion or what they're doing with everything when it comes to House of Torture. So I think you might be onto something in the next 6 months, but there's too many irons in the fire and investment to the House of Torture now for them to dissolve and dissolve this faction the way it is right now immediately. But they're wearing thin on my last bit of patience too. I look at the clock on my wrist when I'm just like, okay, well, we got this, but it's just a part of New Japan.
Yeah, I guess I wish it weren't holding back Show and Evil so much, because those guys.
Yeah, no, those are completely valid criticisms, and it's just one of those things that I think it's their idea of hitting a Western type faction with Western type wrestling, and it kind of misses the mark in a lot of ways.
So we've determined that this tournament has kind of moved Suzuki down the card a bit. We have determined that House of Torture is in a bit of trouble. We haven't mentioned Clark Connors yet. I think that this team with Taguchi has hurt him a little bit. If he comes out of this, I mentioned the same thing last week, so I'll be brief. If they move on from this and just say, well, he's not teaming with Taguchi anymore, so he's not doing goofy shit, but it's getting worse in this tournament, Jeremy. It started off with the East meets West, haha, I've got a beer. Taguchi's doing his rear end based comedy, which isn't funny. And they've gone now, degenerated to the point where they're running around with their pants down and they have matching trunks underneath their tights, and
he's eating dry ramen in the ring
and pouring beer in the ramen. This is moving toward, it's hurting Clark Connors, and not just like this is a temporary thing. Like, Connors needs to get the living hell away from this kind of comedy if he wants to be taken any kind of. Even Watto, when he teamed with Taguchi, didn't do this shit. And so I know he's going along to get along, and I know he's not in a position to say no or push back on anything, but good Lord, I hope to God that Clark Connors, who's really talented, gets the hell away from this comedy, because it's really making him look like a schmuck.
It's not great. I think, like I said last week, I think he's just being a company man and put in a position to do what was asked for him and and he's making the best of it. Because like, what the hell are we going to do, you and I, in terms of making this like an entertaining story? And this is what they came up with. And, like, it's not bad performance in the ring. It's just not entertaining. Like, everything ring wise is capable. Even like pulling the pants down and do it. And like, they had it staged for the camera. Everything was great. Like, there was one moment where Clark Connors had his pants down and they did the pin, and the ring rope actually censored.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. For as much as I don't like this gimmick, that was a pretty sick shot.
I just don't think this is somebody that you take seriously. This is not what somebody you take seriously does.
There are better days ahead. He's bottom of the card, like young lion, getting his first few like years under his belt at New Japan. I'm really not worried, but I totally validate like the devaluing of him in this ring, whether it's by choice by him to get over in some misguided way, or this was the company dictating what he needed to do.
As far as people who have been helped, Team TMDK, Shane Haste and Mikey Nicholls, boy, they've been good in this thing. And I think that this is something that when they come back, I think they'll be taken very seriously. And with any luck, we'll be seeing some version of TMDK again. We don't know what's going on with Jonah, but Bad Dude Tito, some of the other TMDK guys, that could be a faction that could come in and out for a tour and really help things along. We mentioned Alex Coughlin already. We mentioned Aussie Open already. So there are some people, mostly foreign stars, not really any domestic stars that are really being pushed here in this tournament and really coming up. But this has been one where some fresh foreign talent is getting a real strong look from these fans. And I think that all of them are going to be beneficial to the roster going forward. A roster, as we mentioned many times, coming out of the pandemic needs new blood.
You know, I'm gonna give an honorable mention to Lio Rush. Lio Rush is a guy.
No, you're right.
Lio Rush is a guy that, you know, hasn't been able to stay in a promotion for too long or maintain a high quality or whatnot. But he has maintained a high level of performance in the ring. Everything about what he has done, and it looks like this is a great fit. It looks like there is a lot of potential, and it looks like he's enjoying being here. So
I think PWG and New Japan are about the only two companies where you can be as small as Lio Rush is and still get a push, still be presented as something other than the plucky underdog who gets in a few moves and then gets mashed by somebody. And this is a good spot for him if he enjoys it. It's being the Japanese tours aren't for everyone, but if he likes this is a good chance for him to really shine because not too many people are better athletes.
No, not at all. He what's the best way to put it? Like sometimes he can be his own worst enemy when portrayed in the media, and with his own decision making. But
that's fair criticism.
But right now we're seeing the best Lio Rush has to offer.
Now, as if all this wrestling wasn't enough, Jeremy here has been helpful enough to have watched weeks and weeks of New Japan Strong. And we haven't been able to do it in the last couple of weeks. There's so much to talk about. But we're going to get it in because we don't want to fall too far behind. New Japan Strong, Jeremy, what's been going on with that? What are highlights, lowlights? Tell us what you've seen.
All right. So we had 2 weeks of New Japan Strong Showdown from the 19th and the 26th. I watched these shows, but I was out of town and doing stuff with Thanksgiving. And yeah, honestly, you can't be expected to watch everything around Thanksgiving. And I still haven't caught up. But New Japan did take priority, so I was trying to make sure I caught up on all of this stuff. So the first week, we had 3 matches. The first one was Kita versus Peter Avalon. Peter Avalon won in a little short of 10 minutes with his golden arch. But Kita is someone to keep an eye out for. He's a young black man who just has a lot of potential, and there's something indescribable. Like, okay, there's something about this guy that he's got the look. He's got something. He reminds me a little bit of Jor-El Nelson from West Coast Wrecking Crew, but something a little more tangible. That like there's something there that I can't put my finger on, but I was maintaining watching him throughout this entire match. So
by the way, just wanted to mention one other thing. Peter Avalon should wrestle Alex Zane in a Golden Arch versus Taco Bell Cinnamon Twist battle right there. That's just something that popped in.
Gross. Peter Avalon was done no favors by a mic that wasn't working at the beginning of the match and then turned on the mic, and the mic was set to too low. So it looked a little junior varsity there, but, you know, it's New Japan Strong. It was probably one of the first matches on the show. So then we had a tag match of Blake Christian and Mascara Dorada versus Chris Bay and El Phantasmo. When I was watching this, I was like, oh, this probably should have been Chris Bay and Ace Austin as a tune-up match, but it was not. It was still this. Blake Christian and Mascara Dorada have been around New Japan Strong for a little bit of while, and Blake Christian's trying to start to make a singles name for himself, but they were felled by the veteran team of Chris Bay and Phantasmo, who have worked together in the past, and because of it, had the advantage against this team that wasn't quite familiar with each other. And then the main event. This has been building for quite some time, and I apologize for not getting to it earlier, but it was Homicide versus Tom Lawler.
All right.
We had a 14-minute match here in which Homicide won with a lariat, and it appears that the lariat is Tom Lawler's kryptonite. If you remember, he has lost the lariat to Okada. He has lost the lariat to Homicide, and I believe he lost the lariat to somebody else as well, but I can't remember offhand who it was. It might have been at the Rumble on 44th. But as we will get to later, it does not appear that the Homicide versus Tom Lawler feud has been finished, because Danny Limelight decided that his old partner, Homicide, is messing with the wrong guy, and he and Homicide are going to have a match that I will cover shortly. Not this next week of recap, but the week after, which is Detonation, after I hit this one. On the 26th, we had a New Japan Showdown show of Kyle Davis and Mark Fletcher against Greg Sharp and Jacob Austin Young. Do you know who Greg Sharp and Jacob Austin Young are, Stephen Conway?
Help me out.
No, I don't know either, and that's why Mark Davis and Kyle Fletcher beat them in 5 minutes with the Coriolis.
Nicely done.
Thank you. This was a tune-up match for Mark Davis and Kyle Fletcher. Yet another match in which they won handily, to all those that say that Aussie Open do never win any matches.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of Aussie Open wins for a team that never wins. But
so that's all I'm saying. It's like you could cage match that one, and their win percentage is pretty strong.
Pretty strong.
So then we had a really good match here in Jake Something versus Juice Robinson. Jake Something is a Ring of Honor veteran, and he's starting to make his way in the New Japan Strong world. Excellent physique, excellent wrestling skill. One of those guys that has faced Juice Robinson a number of times before. Previously, Juice Robinson snuck out with the win on this one with a rock slide. Was not an easy win for him, but was a good match to watch. And then we had the main event of the Showdown special. It was Fred Rosser versus Jay White, champion versus champion, in a special singles match. Now, Steven, I'm pretty critical about Fred Rosser matches because I feel like the dynamic is off, in which Fred Rosser is much better as an underdog fighting from below than he is as a defending champion. And because that dynamic did not exist in this, because Jay White is considered a better wrestler than him, this was a different Fred Rosser match than I have been watching of recent, and I thought it was great. Well worth your 20 minutes to take to watch it. Jay White finished him off in 20 minutes with the Blade Runner, and there's not much to say other than if you wanted to, in your mind, formulate the perfect Fred Rosser versus Jay White match, this would be that match all the way down to the finish. Everything was exactly what you'd think that these guys could do in the ring, and it was more than acceptable. I really liked it. You got any thoughts on that?
I'm sure it's pretty good. You know, Jay White is one of those guys that steps up in big matches better than almost anyone, and he's up in there in the Okada and Kenny Omega range for me, as far as someone who, if you need to deliver a good main event, he can do it. And sometimes his preview tags can be pedestrian to the point that it lulls you to sleep on him and just think, well, is this guy really a great... He's a great wrestler, and he's going to show up big against Okada right there. When he turns on the jets, he's one of the best in the world. And I have no doubt that he and Fred Rosser put on a nice show right here because he's motivated to do so. And it's anytime he's in that spotlight, he's a great big match wrestler. And that's it's something that he's really contributed to New Japan is that type of atmosphere.
He went really hard, and you got to think about it. It's probably one of the last singles matches he was going to have before Wrestle Kingdom. Yeah. So he was willing to go hard and go to the limit with this guy. So we now have one show of New Japan Strong Detonation to cover, and this is a very quick show for me to watch as well. These are all our shows on New Japan World if you want to seek them out. The first match was a Lucha Libre rule tag match with Adrian Quest and Rocky Romero getting the victory over Atlantis Jr. and Virus. Virus. I was reading it. I'm like, that's not right. That's definitely not right. This wasn't This wasn't a great match.
No.
There were a lot of people that were wrestling that perhaps better days were behind them, but it was definitely an Adrian Quest highlight match, and a lot of it was designed to give him a little bit of shine and show him off a little bit. And then we had the Homicide versus Danny Limelight match that I mentioned.
Set up earlier
and knock him down. They waited 2 weeks to pay this one off, and Danny Limelight lost to Homicide, and as Homicide was about to pull out his suitcase full of murder tools from underneath the ring, I'm not kidding, there was a suitcase underneath.
Where do you put yours? Mine goes under the ring.
I mean, sometimes, you got to check your bags. But as he's about to literally kill Danny Limelight, who but Bobby Fish.
Bobby Fish
shows up. Where's the lie?
The man's everywhere.
The man is everywhere. He pulled his Where's the Lie routine, and he explained that he is now with the Filthy Crew, and he is a friend of Filthy, and this is a whole deal, and we should expect to see him around a little bit more. And honestly, Bobby Fish and Filthy's crew, fine, sure. I got no problem with that whatsoever. Not at all.
He'll be terrific until he gets hurt.
He'll be terrific until he's not terrific anymore. And that's the way Bobby Fish is.
Poor guy just gets hurt everywhere he goes. That's the problem.
So the week before Showdown, there was an excellent promo by Juice Robinson hyping up this main event match of Blake Christian and Juice Robinson. Juice Robinson was angry. He was lit. He called out to the entire generation of Blake Christian's generation of wrestlers. He let them know that they weren't wrestlers. They were kids. They were boys. He was a pro wrestler. He was what they would call, you saw what I did to Red Narita. If you want that smoke, you come in there, but you're not ready for this kid. And then they went in there. They had a near 10-minute match. Juice Robinson escaped with a roll-up. It was a good match. There's definitely more to come. Definitely seems like there's a lot more to come with this, where Blake Christian is going to get his win. And Juice Robinson right now is firmly in his phase of putting over younger talent and just doing that. I don't know what his ceiling is with belts and career, but he seems totally fine doing matches with guys like Ren Narita and Blake Christian and feuds like that, in which, they're going to come out looking great afterwards. That's a great use of Juice Robinson. So thumbs up to this match. It's leading up definitely to something more.
All right. Well, we'll see what that is in the coming weeks and the coming tapings. And so that's a little review of NJPW Strong. Now, I had a couple of things I wanted to go over here on tag team tournament history, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm looking at this, and it does not have the rich history that the All Japan Tag Team Tournament does, which always had the best stars paired up together, big time foreign teams come in, and it was one of the highlights of the calendar. New Japan's just never been in tag team territory, never has been, and there have been some very, very excellent teams in New Japan, certainly, but the history of the World Tag League is that it's a fun tour, but it certainly never approached anything like a G1 level of drama and importance. But there have been some really great teams over the history of things, and I'll start with the junior heavyweight tournament, because that actually hasn't been around all that long. 2010 was the very first one. Then they didn't even do one in 2011. Since then, it's been a yearly thing. Started off as a single elimination tournament, was for a long time. So they just went with the single elimination bracket style thing. The very first one was won by El Samurai and Koji Kanemoto. Koji Kanemoto and El Samurai, both stars from the 90s in New Japan, and in 2010 they were teaming and kind of having one more run. They were the last of the classic old guys there from the 90s, but two excellent wrestlers. If you ever see either of these guys against Liger back in the 90s, if you can find those matches on YouTube, holy crap, I mean, these guys are fantastic. After that, started to see some of the more current guys there. That was a bit of a nostalgia thing, but after that, teams like the Time Splitters, Alex Shelley and Kushida, the Young Bucks, Red Dragon, Bobby Fish, and Kyle O'Reilly, Matt Sydal and Ricochet and things. But this tournament, Jeremy, there was a common thread that weaved its way through a lot of these, and it's Rocky Romero. Rocky Romero and Kevin Kelly talk all the time about how he's one of the more decorated junior heavyweights. It really comes home when you look at some of these things. So I'll get into all that. So early on, Prince Devitt and Taguchi, so of course that's Finn Balor now, were a team, and they lost in the first final to Kanemoto and Samurai, then to the Time Splitters in 2012. So Taguchi and Devitt, one of the better teams that didn't win one of these. But after that, we had the Young Bucks. They went to the finals in 2013, and they defeated the Forever Hooligans. That's Alex Kozlov and Rocky Romero. They just teamed up again for the first time in a long time at the 44th Street show there, New Japan did in New York City. And then the following year, the Bucks went back to the finals and lost to Red Dragon, Fish and O'Reilly. So Romero and Kozlov, they're in the finals. After that, you saw Roppongi Vice. Now that's Rocky and Beretta. They went to the finals in 2015 and 2016. They won in 2016, defeating ACH and Taiji Ishimori. Interesting tag team there. ACH, a guy you don't see around all that much. Roppongi, and then after that, let's see, that's 2015 and 2016. So he's involved in, 3 of the last 4 there. And then he brought Roppongi 3K in. They had been the Tempura Boys in Ring of Honor, of course. Brought them back, named them Roppongi 3K, Sho and Yo, and they won the final single elimination tournament over ACH and Taguchi that time. So Rocky Romero involved in 3 of the last 4 finals there, and then brings Roppongi 3K to win in 2017, and then they won the first 2 block tournaments in 2018 and 2019 when they went to the round robin format. So again, Rocky Romero heavily involved in all that. Then Sho and Yo lost in the final to 2020. So Rocky basically part of almost every single final for 7 years straight there, 8 years straight. And of course, Sho and Yo broke up in the tournament in 2021. So that's how all that kind of saga goes there. Rocky Romero, a key figure in the junior heavyweight tournament. After that, Desperado and Kanemaru were actually the dominant team. They went to the finals the last 2 years. Of course, Desperado involved in that 4-way at Wrestle Kingdom for the junior heavyweight title, so he's not in the tournament this year. And that's kind of what happened with the junior heavyweight title. A lot of interesting teams in there, but it's never been a thing. Also, a name you notice there, no Liger at all. Right. He hasn't been involved. He was been involved in tournaments, but never booked to do well in them particularly. So there you go. That's the junior heavyweight tournament. I have some stats here on the heavyweight tournament, which has been going on a lot longer. Of course, we talked about how some of the early ones in the very early 80s were dominated by Inoki. Big surprise. Again, when you're the owner and the booker, you tend to win a lot of matches. But it's just some stats from this here. Again, over the years, teams kind of come and go as far as being dominant. But here are some people that have been strong in tag team tournaments. Inoki and Kaiji Muto are tied with 5 tournament wins. But here's an interesting thing, Jeremy. No team has ever won World Tag League 3 times.
Really?
So Inoki and Muto have won 5. So Inoki's partners were Hulk Hogan twice. They won twice. Bob Backlund, so, team with the WWF champion, you're in good shape. Tatsumi Fujinami and Yoshiaki Fujiwara. Those were Inoki's partners in his 5 wins. Kaiji Muto teamed up with Hiroshi Hase twice, Masachono once, Satoshi Kojima once, and Scott Norton once. So Kojima has also won with Hiroshi Tenzan, of course. Tenzan also won it with Osamu Nishimura and Masachono. So Tenzan has 3 wins, but 4 wins, excuse me, and then 2 with Kojima, but again, no 3s, and a couple of repeat winners over the years. In fact, in recent times, Togi Makabe and Honma, Togi Makabe and Tomoke Honma won in 2015 and 2016, and then a transition to Evil and Sonata, who won it in 2017 and 2018 with the LIJ faction. Hiroki Goto has won it 3 times with 3 different partners: Yoshihashi, Katsuyori Shibata, and Carl Anderson. That was back in the days before Carl Anderson joined Bullet Club. And of course, the Katsuyori Shibata angle with Goto was the culmination of a very long thing where Shibata left New Japan, came back. Of course, he was one of the 3 Musketeers along with Tanahashi and Nakamura. And when he came back, there was all this resentment portrayed in the ring that he had left while they were there to carry the company through what had been some dark times. Part of all that storyline was him having these feud matches with those guys and trying to regain his standing within the company. And it was Hiroki Goto, who they knew each other from way back, I believe high school, perhaps further than that, but certainly high school. And Goto was the one to say, I'll team with the guy. And they ended up winning Tag League together. So that was actually an important story. It was the story that brought Shibata back instead of being some outside interloper jerk for leaving into being a New Japan guy again. And so that was part of that storyline. Carl Anderson, of course, I mentioned that he won it with Goto before he broke off and turned heel and joined Bullet Club. He also won it with Doc Gallows, of course, and then another time with Giant Bernard, who was also Prince Albert, who's also Matt Bloom. Matt Bloom, one of the head trainers at NXT now. So there you have it, a little bit of things going on with a little bit of history going on with how people have worked their way through these tag team tournaments over the years, and we'll see who comes out on top this year very soon.
Can't wait to hear more for this next time, man. I learned so much from you. Like, I get something out of it. Like, there's a lot of information to take in, but it's on YouTube. It's recorded for all posterity. You can come back to it whenever.
Yeah,
and it's all out there now. I'm so happy.
It is pretty cool, and there are some of these matches in the archives of New Japan World. Again, with it's not an emphasized thing. So when you go back over the years through New Japan World, you don't often see a lot of world. You don't see all the World Tag League matches. You have the last few years since they have World because all that stuff's archived. But going back and back and back, not all that much is there, but what's there is they did pick pretty good stuff. So I have enjoyed what I've seen. So worth taking a look at. And then next week, I'm going to have something on Tatsumi Fujinami, who is, unfortunately, with the passing of Inoki, for obvious reasons, has been overshadowed a little bit. His career is he's in his 70s, still wrestles every once in a while, and was on the very first New Japan show, really kind of their first homegrown guy. So we're going to go into some of his career because, unfortunately, his 50th anniversary in wrestling is coming and going without the fanfare it would have gotten. But Inoki's death overshadows all, doesn't it?
He overshadows everything, and it always seems to make me laugh that Inoki has fingerprints on everything. Even if it's just a residual here, there, everywhere, somehow, some way, Inoki is involved. So just like, and how's Inoki involved in this one?
Well, he's going to be involved in Fujinami a lot.
Oh, I bet. All right. Do you have socials? Because I have socials. I was going to mention one last thing before we wrap it up. And if anyone is still listening and or watching at this point, we'd love to get your feedback on how you'd feel about either us going live for a show or offering an audio version of this podcast. And so if you are watching at this point and you want to leave a comment in our YouTube or to us at Jer Finestone or Stephen Conway 88 on Twitter to let us know your thoughts on these things, it will heavily be taken into account. What do you think about that, Stephen Conway? Are we ready for that next step in our relationship with the fans?
I am bracing myself for the feedback. Hopefully it's good out there. So, but we do want to hear what you think about the show. We want to hear about how you would like to consume the show. If not just YouTube there, we're happy to do it live. We're happy to do a podcast. So let us know. And be sure to tell a friend about the show. It helps us a lot. Jeremy mentioned our socials there earlier. Anything else you want to add before we sign off for this week, Jeremy?
I did an episode of The Wrap, which I, through a weird twist of fate, ended up being the host of the show and not just a guest. So we talked all things WWE on the Fight Game Media audio channel. You can find on Spotify or Apple podcast platform. It is The Wrap. It is the Kevin and Sammy and my advocating for a women's mid-level title on the main rosters because they have 33 women and 2 main title singles championships for 33 women. And that seems like too little for a lot of talent. So if you want to hear my argument, go there because I'm not doing it here.
All right. Well, with that in mind, we're going to sign off for this week. We'll be back next week with more Speaking of Strong Style. We definitely appreciate you joining us today. And as we go on, we'll be talking about World Tag League. We will be talking about the finals of Junior Tag League. And then we're heading right up. Wrestle Kingdom is coming. We're going to have guests about that. We're going to have special shows. So much going on. So we're definitely fired up. Oh man, it's the first birthday present I get every year is at the very early, the wee hours of my birthday every year is Wrestle Kingdom. I can't.
It's our birthday week.
Exactly. So with that in mind, for Jeremy Finestone, I'm Stephen Conway. Thanks for tuning in to Speaking of Strong Style, and we will see you again very soon.